Good morning, everyone. Meteorologist Michael Wilhite here with Southern Indiana Weather, bringing you the latest long-range update. Hurricane Matthew is just absolutely been pounding Florida. You know, the good news is, if there is any good news, the eye has not really made it on shore yet, but, you look at this and you see just how close that eye is. The edge of the eye there is only about 10, 15 miles offshore as it's been cutting up. And of course, that allows the hurricane force winds to extend, some 60, 70 plus miles into shore as you go through this. So, certainly not a good time to be down in Florida. Areas from here down in Florida did get at least spared a little bit of the worst of it, simply because of the angle that this moved in. But the further you get up into Florida, the worse things become. Cape Canaveral had winds of over 100 miles an hour there on shore this morning. There's the eye right there spinning about. It's kind of moving to the northwest, and you can just see. There's just some absolutely just tremendous rain coming down with this, and there's really just some tremendous winds coming down to this as well. If I just switch over here to the velocity and give you an idea of what's going on. Just take a look at some of these impressive wind speeds. You can notice right down here in this, you'll be able to see the wind speed. You're talking, there's 100 mile per hour, there's 102 mile per hour right there. Orlando here at the time experiencing, close to 70 mile per hour winds there. Over here too, you're looking at extreme winds as well. So you're talking winds between 90 and over 100 miles an hour at times coming on shore here. Not a pretty picture here at all, and you can just see how these winds have been rotating around. This is the eye wall, and the eye wall, of course, right on shore, doing some devastation. The other big thing about this is, of course, the storm surge that's going to go with this. Basically, what you've got in storm surge is because you've got hurricane force winds extending out and strong winds extending out here way into the storm. You've got, it's just, think of it like a hand versus an arm. If the winds only extended out into here, it'd just be like your hand pushing some water in the bathtub. But whenever you put your arm to push the water, you get a lot more, and that's what you've got whenever you've got these extreme winds extending out. So the storm surge up in here is just going to be absolutely impressive with this. This really is a historic storm. We've never really seen a storm just kind of ride up the coast like this. Will this thing even make landfall? There's a possibility it might not. We thought it would make landfall right around Cape Canaveral, but this eye is just hanging out 10 to 15 miles offshore. And the reality is it may not. But even if it doesn't, it's still going to be a pretty destructive storm as far as that goes. Now, here's the way the hurricane models track it, and you can see basically the general idea here is that it does start to curve, move out to sea, but then from there, you got different ideas. Some curve it down in here, some take it out to sea. Honestly, the curving down idea is probably what's going to happen, because you also have Hurricane Nicole out here, which is going to take an effect on it. Once they get so close to each other, they're just going to sort of be forced away from each other, and that'll be about the end of it. That's what the GFS ensembles, for the most part, the GFS ensembles here, tracking it down an area like that as well. The official forecast from the National Hurricane Center, well, you can see that as well. Sort of, here's the position of where it is at 8 a.m. this morning, and it never makes landfall, and it sort of just tracks up here along the coast. I wouldn't be surprised if the eye doesn't go briefly on shore someplace. That's still a real possibility. Then again, it may not, but regardless of whether it makes landfall, it's a pretty devastating storm. Over 500,000 people without power right now in Florida, and lots of damage going on, I'm sure. Whenever you have winds 100 plus miles per hour on shore, that's going to take off roofs. That's just going to batter places. So pretty potent storm down there, and unfortunately it looks like Matthew could do a loop-de-loop and come back, and it may even hit the south part of Florida or the Bahamas here again as a tropical storm next midweek into the forecast. So have we ever seen something do this before? We have, but it's pretty rare. Hurricane Ivan, back several years ago, actually tracked in a manner similar like this. I believe it hit right around in here and then went up and then loop-de-loop back into Florida like that before finally going back and slamming into Texas. So Hurricane Ivan was a pretty unique storm as well. So it's not unheard of to do something like this, but it is pretty rare. All right, so back here, it's a different story. No rain to worry about, nothing that. The warm October just continues. We've been buried with sunshine, and we've not had much rain at all to speak of. There's possibility that we get a stray shower overnight as mostly a dry cold front moves through. I would almost bet that nobody gets any rain out of this. Unfortunately, high temperatures today going to be in the mid 80s around the area. We'll see a good amount of sunshine, maybe a few clouds. It's going to be a beautiful day, but this certainly is not an October field day. We're running about 15 plus degrees normal in some places around here. Now, let's talk about some of our climate signals. If you looked at my at the end of September, I released my October outlook. You can always go to southernindianaweather.com and be sure you follow my blog, folks, because I put a lot more information on the blog and I update it way more frequently than I do these videos. One of the things I do at the end of every month is talk about the next month's pattern. And so we're looking here at the climate signals now. We'll look at the Bering Sea rule, and we'll sort of look at what signals are sort of coming down the pipe here to give us an idea of what the month should be like. And of course, the first signal that I identified for you in that post was about the 7th or so of October, and that was a trough that was going to be moving through. And of course, that trough, here's the 8th and 9th of October. Bering Sea rule, by the way, is, we've overlaid the United States map here. You can get this at organicforecasting.com. They do a fantastic job with these little overlays. But here's Alaska. There's the Aleutian Islands. Let me just turn on there we go. So here's Alaska right here. Here's the Aleutian Islands over here. Here's Korea and Russia over there. Basically, this is this area that we see right in here is the Bering Sea. And what the Bering Sea rule says that what weather is going on there about 20 days or so later is what it's going to correlate to our weather here in the United States. So if we've got a trough rolling through the Bering Sea, right in here, then you got to have a trough somewhere in the United States here, in the eastern United States most likely, about 20 days later or so. It's not a one-to-one correlation, so even though this is a pretty deep trough, it may not necessarily be that deep. It could, and oftentimes it is. Sometimes there are other factors at play that move in that doesn't let us see that, and so that's exactly what the case is. What we see, if you just look by this, you'd say, well, that looks like a pretty deep trough and a pretty significant cool down. It'll be significant in the fact that we're going to go back down into the upper 60s for tomorrow, but it's not going to be a terribly big cool down, and that's because of Hurricane Matthew down here. You've got Hurricane Matthew down here, and so there is your trough up here, and it's kind of keeping the core of that trough away from us, and Hurricane Matthew just really isn't letting this dip down as far as what it could be. So we'll still get a little bit of a cool down on this, and it's going to knock the 80s out. And are these the last 80s that we see this year? I'm not going to say that it is, but there's a good chance of it is. It looks like the extended outlook, as far as I'm concerned, looks like the 70s are going to dominate the period. Next climate signal that we see, though, comes about the 18th of October. Here's the 17th. There's the trough starting to dig into the west. Trough has started to dig here on the 18th, and if you look at that, the climate signals here is mixed as well. The climate signal on this one, again, there's your trough, and so the modeling is seeing it. But on this one, it's more of a northeast trough, and you've got a ridge of high pressure. You've got that southeast ridge back over us again. Now, this far out, the modeling may not be right, so there is a real possibility that we could still see a decent trough out of this, but I wouldn't bank on it yet at this point. With that active southeast ridge, that's really throwing things for a loop this time. But there's the trough. We'll have to watch it in the modeling over the next little while to see whether it truly happens or not. I'll show you another model here in a minute that will have this, and it does give us at least a little bit of a cool down off of it. After that, next climate signal comes here about the 23rd. There's another deep trough. This could end up being a cutoff low as we take a look at this. The low kind of still hanging around here on the 25th, and look at this, even by the 26th through the 28th. My apologies here, folks. From the 26th through the 28th. Could this be another cutoff low situation? Remember the cutoff low situation that we had, what was it, last week or was it 2 weeks ago, where we had rain for just several days there, and the low just set and spun on us and spun and wouldn't go away. Bering Sea rule suggesting that is possible again as we close October. Long-range modeling hinting at it. Here is what the long-range modeling suggests for about 22nd of October. And by the time that you get down into there, notice how deep this trough is. And so that would bring a much, much cooler regime to us as we go through things. And then, of course, still, even by the time we get to the 30th of October, you're getting much the same thing. Now, of course, this might not dig as much. It could dig a little bit more, being the fact that we are 564 hours out on this model. Again, this is a very long-range model. We're not looking at specifics this far out. This far out, the only thing that we're looking at is the fact that it's showing up, really. The climate signal is there per the Bering Sea rule, so we know that something should show up, and that's what the modeling is doing. And the model is showing it could be a pretty significant cool down. And by the way, if you notice this, notice what this white line is. By the way, these are temps at the 850 millibar level. All right. That white line is 0 degrees Celsius. That's saying that we go below freezing about 4,000 feet up into the atmosphere with this. That would translate to a significantly colder regime for us at the surface. Highs probably not out of the 50s that day, maybe even the 40s. If this is right, the question is this right? We don't know yet. We'll have to see. Again, the fact that the signal is showing up and it looks impressive is good, but as we get a little bit closer to time, we'll be able to see it. All right, so let's just take a look at what the GFS model is saying with this, and you'll get a good idea. There's Hurricane Matthew down by Florida, and by the way, this is Hurricane Nicole over here. There's a little dry cold front moving through. Did you catch it? Yeah, just a couple of little dots there. I doubt we get much of anything. I put a 10% chance tonight in the forecast for just a stray shower, but I think most of us are going to stay dry with this one. Then high pressure settles in for us. Watch what Hurricane Matthew does out here, though, along with Hurricane Nicole. Sort of do a little loop-de-loop. They come somewhat close together. Oh, look, their little Matthew and Nicole are kissing each other. She must not have liked it because she sends him the other direction and moves him out in this way, sort of bounces off of her, and then you got a pretty weak system here coming over the Bahamas. Some model runs have even suggested that goes back over Florida. The reality is we really don't know this far out. We'll just kind of have to see and take it day by day with that. Strange configuration. We don't see that very often, but it's becoming more and more clear that's probably what's going to happen here. Here's our next cold front on the way, and if we go ahead and sort of just paint it down here, there's pretty much where that cold front would be. Watch it go through here, and that would give us a small chance for some showers here, maybe around the 13th or so, and then we've got a secondary low that's attached to it moving through, brings us some more showers here about the 15th, 16th. Then there's yet another cold front that moves through about the 17th. Remember, the 17th was our next signal in this. So our next big signal per the Bering Sea rule. Probably all of that is one big conglomerate system that's connected, and being this far out, probably not seeing everything right yet, so we'll have to adjust the forecast in the coming days, but there it is. Probably not a whole lot of rain with this, but any rain would certainly be welcomed. And then as you head into the longer term here, well, look at this. Here about the 21st, the GFS is wanting to bring us a little system. Remember, we said, per the Bering Sea rule, about the 22nd onward, we should see a system roll through. So it's maybe a little bit faster, and sometimes the GFS does have a speed bias, and it may slow this down over time. But the signals are showing up in the modeling. And then behind that, high pressure settling in, and we'll just have to see what goes on from there. You've got another big storm here developing out to the west that would eventually push through as well. So could that be the cutoff low or the start of the cutoff low that it's seen? The hints are there in the modeling, but we have to work out a lot of details between now and then. The bottom line for me, folks, is it looks like October is going to end on the chilly side, and I can say that with a little bit of a degree of confidence because you just look back up here. Here is the Bering Sea again. There's the Aleutian Islands, and here's this. And so if we just look at what's going on now, the Bering Sea rule, this is by the way, all of these are going through analyses that we have had through today. So what I want to do is I want to show you some of the forecast modeling for this as well. And notice this trough up in here, and notice how persistent this trough stays really for the next several days. Here we are the 7th, we're out to the 11th now, and we've still got that trough over in the Bering Sea, and that trough really doesn't start to wean until about mid-October, about the 14th or so. That's going to tell me if we have a persistent trough out there, and if this modeling is really right, that by the time we get into the end of October, it's going to be a much cooler regime than what we are seeing even tomorrow. Could be a very active and cold start to November and end of October if this is right. Now, I have to take a little while to see, but the signals are certainly there. By the way, it would fit with my analogs. My winter analog package that I use says this is what our temperatures look like in November, and that gives us pretty chilly. So the idea of that sustained trough up there would be consistent with a cold start to November, and a cold November is what my analogs are showing. Analogs are not always right. Analogs, remember, are just looking back at previous years with similar ocean conditions to determine what our weather was like, and those similar years yielded a cold November. Doesn't necessarily mean we're going to have a cold November, but it's happened in the past pretty frequently with what we see. So there is an idea. The Bering Sea Rule is confirming there could be an idea. That doesn't mean all of November will be cold, but it's looking more and more likely to me that the end of October and beginning of November starts off on the chilly side. All right, folks, remember you can always go to southernindianaweather.com, click on 10-day forecast, and you can get my updated forecast. Say goodbye to the 80s after today, about 69 tomorrow, and then some 70s will dominate the period. And as we get into the later part of next week, there's that cold front bringing us some daily rain chances moving through. Remember, by the way, my winter forecast, the preliminary one, is already out. It was released on September 24th. Go to southernindianaweather.com, hover over Winter tab. There it is. You'll be able to review. You'll be able to view my thoughts about the winter, along with some modeling and what some of the other things. It's a pretty detailed little write-up if you're interested, and there are some thoughts as to what I think winter will come. My final one comes out on November 5th. Be sure to check that out. All right. Say a prayer for Florida, folks. They are under the gun. That's it for now.